I know you guys have done a lot of work with the high-end brands. There's been Rolex or Chanel or Gucci. I- how did you get into that space, and how and are they challenging clients to work with? What goes on when you work with them, or is it like an international company that has a standard template that you need to follow?
See, for these brands, first to answer your question, how did we get into it? When the retail foray into India opened up, let's say I think somewhere in the early 2000s or something, when Emporio Delhi happened. So that is the time when these brands were coming for the first time into the country in a formal way,
Right.
in a proper organized way. So they were looking for architects within the country who they could rely upon for as resident architects. So we were fortunate to get a call from them, and from that point is where a journey started into this luxury segment into the country. And talking about how the format works, definitely they have a template, which is a global template, what we call as the Bible, which they follow. But there is a whole lot of adaptation which happens. So that's why they need a resident architect, and also to take care of the MEP and the adaptation of their design and their Bible into the space which they're going to build up. So we've been doing that a lot.
So there's a lot of value engineering evolved around that. And that also has given us a lot of exposure to
Even
global
materials.
practices,
Yeah.
right from design, execution, engineering,
Materials.
manufacturing,
Materials. I mean,
everything. I mean, so the kind of learnings we got from them, and also the kind of value addition and value engineering we did for them, and the whole professionalism around these brands. you know so the kind of respect that we got from them was like amazing, because we were talking sense and we were trying to make them things work in a local way, trying to save them resources, trying to be smart about their executions and their end product, and giving them a product which was like absolutely comparable to what they were doing anywhere on the globe. So that taught us a lot. That opened the exposure we got was like phenomenal, and it continues to be so. So we learned so much from that. We developed so much for that, and I think and those practices and those learnings also started getting used in our other design processes.
What would be the two or three key learning points that had a very big impact uh, that you learned from these global companies that you were able to implement
I
in?
think one important point which Amit mentioned is to learn like communication, for example. How communication is so important for a project. Communication between architects, the contractors, all the stakeholders, whether it's a mall or a client, and consultants and vendors and all that. That communication, the thread of communication, what we learn from these foreign brands is extremely important, because that is what ties up the whole project, and you're able to deliver at the right time with the right quality. So I think that is one of the very
So this
important.
is
And
particular.
also the thing that very critically we learned from them is like you do the way you schedule your project,
Yeah,
each and
yeah.
everything. And
Yeah.
that whole schedule, here you don't want to rush through things. You plan everything very systematically, and then your execution goes very seamlessly and smoothly. So, and those are the practices which till then it was difficult for us to convince our other, Indian clientele that we were working for, and for ourselves also. You know, you used to work on a short-term goals rather than complete overall
Right.
planning and packages and decisions. So take more planning, more decisions, everything finalized before you actually jump into execution, and then your execution is absolutely flawless and seamless.
Even get the sequence correct. What has to happen first and what has to happen second time after that. Many a times you do the later thing first, and the one which has to happen now you do it later. It just messes up the whole trail. So I think that sequence in scheduling is one of
And
the
then
really.
somebody sitting in Singapore is coordinating with somebody sitting in Italy,
Oh
and then
yeah,
we are
yes,
coordinating,
yes.
and the site is in Bangalore.
Right.
So that whole importance of communication, that whole importance of, as I said, and the whole point was also that any good idea is welcome. There's no bad idea. You want to solve a problem. So to work, there was one meeting I remember where they were actually, and very interesting, they were all architects. So somebody is running a, a furniture unit somewhere in one part of the globe. Another person is just specializing in signages. And So with that meeting, we actually had people from 5 continents,
Wow.
architects by education, doing different things, coming together to, it was, I mean, and just to see how everybody is specialized in their respective field, the kind of engineering they have developed to for those products, the kind of design inputs, and the whole ecosystem
details-
that they created.
The details in the drawings, yeah. That was so important to understand how a detailed drawing should be. Which in which the translation is so easy, and you can't go wrong because there is no scope to go wrong in these projects. So communication, drawings, materials, the variety of materials they use, the new materials and the sampling and mock-ups, all these things. There are a lot of these things which we learn from these projects.
Do you think their knowledge, which now, of course, as more exposure happens and the knowledge is getting transferred into our country, but the knowledge that they have on just how to execute projects better, to be more systematic, is it coming out of the education system, or is just that over the years they've built, their own competency around it?
No, so I'll answer this in a very different way. Most of these global luxury brands, I call them, have a very long heritage.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
so they have, through their experience and through their journey, been able to build those values into their systems. Whereas we, as you rightly said, we are a very young nation, and despite our long history and everything like that, the whole focus on building systems or brands is something very new to us. Cartier is an old jeweler, but there are older jewelers in India, right?
Yeah.
Why hasn't that? Even a chocolatier from Switzerland becomes a global brand. So that whole ethos is not there only for their own product. It's also for the whole ecosystem around the product. And how those companies don't diversify into different things. They stick to their core values, and they just keep improving and making themselves better and keeping them ahead of the curve. Whereas Indian business houses typically will, diversify. Everybody will get into real estate.
Yeah.
Everybody will do everything. So that whole thing of building brands and products and becoming, I think, is a different ecosystem, which we don't have here. So we are very masters of what we learned, you may say intuitively, growing up in India.
Yeah.
You are a jack of all trades. You can do this also. To run a small business, you have to be good at accounts also. You have to be good at HR also, so on and so forth. So that was our ingrained strength. But what we learned from these people were the systems. And once we married the two,
that's where the magic kind of happens.
I think
right?
it became a very sharp knife.
Yeah. I won't go a knife. I'd say that's where the magic happens.
Yeah,
right?
it does.
Yeah.